Welcome to our deep dive into Toni Tennille's candid revelations about her life with the late Captain Daryl Dragon. In this video, we'll explore the heartfelt realities behind one of the 1970s most iconic musical duos, the Captain and Tennille, and uncover the emotional distance that existed beneath their dazzling stage presence. From the unexpected motivation behind their marriage to the persistent effort Toni made to break through Daryl's reserved nature, this is the story behind the music and the sad truth at the core of their relationship. Musically, there was a great synergy, but romantically, it sounded like a nightmare. It kind of was because I just was this person constantly looking for something he couldn't give, and that part was wrong. But the music, we were right there together. There was not a lot of romance in this. No, there was no connection to me. It should be an intimate, deep, loving connection that happens. People thought we had this fairy tale relationship, and I knew that they would be disappointed. When Toni Tennille describes her marriage to Daryl Dragon in these stark terms, like a nightmare, the contrast between the duo's public image and private truth becomes immediately apparent. It is easy to understand why this truth might shock longtime fans. From the outside, many believe that the Captain and Tennille embodied a blissful romance that matched their upbeat melodies and playful banter on television. Yet behind that facade, Toni felt an ongoing emptiness, a hunger for emotional closeness that Daryl seemingly could not satisfy. To fully grasp the magnitude of this disconnect, it's crucial to recall that the 1970s music scene thrived on the notion of charismatic duos or couples, especially those who penned or performed love songs. Captain and Tennille, with hits like "Do That to Me One More Time," gave off the impression that they were living the very emotions they sang about. Fans bought into the idea of a real-life love story. Yet Toni's revelation pulls back the curtain, revealing that the synergy they enjoyed was strictly musical. It is a striking admission. They were masters at harmonizing on stage, but that harmony did not extend to the realm of intimacy. This situation places Toni in the difficult position of having to perform songs about love while privately grappling with the absence of romance. In show business, performers often adopt certain personas, but Toni's persona was so intertwined with love and warmth that the internal conflict must have weighed heavily on her. One can imagine the dissonance in her mind, audiences swooning over a presumed fairy tale, while she stood center stage, acutely aware that her emotional reality was much bleaker. Despite this distress, the pair carried on for decades, which underscores how a shared professional ambition can sometimes eclipse deep personal dissatisfaction. Furthermore, by describing herself as someone constantly looking for something he couldn't give, Toni offers insight into the sense of longing that marked her daily experience. She was not just missing small tokens of affection, she was missing the foundations of a truly intimate partnership. Over the years, that sense of longing evolved into a fundamental rift in their relationship. Yet the music they produced together remained a bond that both carried them forward and masked their deeper issues. Today, Toni is, get ready for this, 75 years old. She still looks great, and you still have the same haircut, Vidal Sassoon. Her marriage to Daryl Dragon, otherwise known as the Captain, was brought with problems from the beginning. She says what finally got us to marry was when our accountant said, you could pay a lot less taxes if you were married. I mean, not me. I wanted to, but that was what Daryl said. Okay. The origin of their marriage, as Toni narrates, is surprisingly unromantic. Rather than an impassioned proposal or a shared conviction about uniting their lives, it was an accountant's suggestion that tied the knot for them. This revelation might unsettle those who believed the couple's decision to marry stemmed from passionate love. Indeed, you could pay a lot less taxes if you were married is a far cry from the romantic scenes fans might envision. Despite the starkness of that motivation, Toni clarifies that she personally wanted to get married for genuine emotional reasons. Yet Daryl's response, okay, hints at a pragmatism that overshadowed the romance. The word problems in the original text signals that Toni recognized early on how the foundation of their marriage was shaky. They were already publicly associated with songs about love and devotion, but behind the scenes, they solidified their union through a tax advantage. In the broader context of show business, marriages sometimes coincide with label demands, marketing strategies, or financial planning, especially in decades past when certain contracts favored married couples. For Captain and Tennille, it seems their marriage was at least partly shaped by these professional and financial considerations. Toni's quick aside, "I wanted to," reveals a deeper emotional investment on her part. She clearly hoped that marriage might cultivate a deeper connection or bring out in Daryl the warmth and romance she longed for. Unfortunately, the seeds of disappointment were planted as soon as she realized that his motivation sprang largely from practicality. Behind the dazzling success of one of the 1970s most beloved musical duos lay a complex story of unfulfilled romance and artistic brilliance. The Captain and Tennille's journey would span 4 decades, producing countless hits while masking a profound personal disconnect that would ultimately lead to their separation. Their story revealed the often painful gap between public perception and private reality. At the height of their fame, Captain and Tennille were emblematic of cheerful pop music. They graced numerous television specials, performed on talk shows, and even hosted a variety series that capitalized on their perceived charm. The public devoured stories of their marital bliss and harmonious collaboration, thus reinforcing the notion that they were one of the most endearing couples in entertainment. In this sense, Toni and Daryl were not just pop stars. They were cultural icons, representing an aspirational image of love and devotion. However, Toni's revelations lay bare the profound personal disconnect that existed from the start. This gap between image and reality is not uncommon in the entertainment industry, but it is rarely so starkly confessed by one half of the duo. The pair's ability to craft countless hits served as both a blessing and a veneer. Those hits gave them acclaim and financial success, but they also perpetuated the storyline of a fairy tale marriage that fans so desperately wanted to believe. This paradox, thriving professionally while suffering personally, speaks to the complexities of show business marriages. Public expectations can become a cage, compelling performers to maintain facades even when they are unhappy. Toni and Daryl found themselves in that cage for 4 decades. Only in retrospect could Toni clearly articulate how that painful gap eroded her sense of fulfillment and peace. Their earliest television appearances gave hints of their contrasting personalities, though few recognized the significance at the time. In a 1975 interview on American Bandstand, the differences were already apparent, with Daryl's reluctance to engage publicly standing in stark contrast to Toni's natural warmth and openness. "Are you?" "Yes." Years later, in a rare interview where Daryl himself opened up, he revealed glimpses of his inner world, showing the vulnerability behind his reserved exterior. His words offered insight into the pressure he felt trying to meet public expectations while staying true to his nature as a musician first and foremost. "Well, how many people think I'm dumb? Raise their hand." See, when we had our show, we had a lot of different input. I used to read all the letters that came in, and some people thought I was dumb. Some people thought I was very good on the keyboards. Some people thought that I shouldn't be doing TV. I still think that it was just an embarrassing situation because I'm mainly a musician. I'm not a performer. And when we were asked to do television way back, I had to learn in front of, we found out later, 50 million people how to act. Here, Toni openly addresses the emotional core of their struggle. In nearly 4 decades of marriage, Daryl Dragon never once told her, "I love you." For any marriage, especially one so publicly defined by romantic pop songs, that is an extraordinary revelation. Toni's insistence that he just couldn't do it suggests not stubbornness on his part, but an inability. In other words, Daryl's upbringing created barriers around emotional expression that he never managed to overcome. Daryl was the son of Carmen Dragon, a renowned conductor and composer with a significant reputation in the music industry. Growing up under the roof of a talented yet possibly overbearing father might have contributed to his relentless focus on music at the expense of personal bonding. Toni's description of Daryl's father as mercurial and critical points to a home environment where affection might have been overshadowed by high artistic standards or perfectionist demands. Daryl, having absorbed this environment from childhood, likely learned to equate approval with performance and to keep the more vulnerable parts of himself hidden. One can sense Toni's empathy when she says, "I can't blame him." Rather than painting Daryl as the villain, she situates his emotional reserve in the context of a family dynamic he did not choose. Yet, her compassion does not negate the sorrow she felt. Her attempts to bring him out spanned decades and were ultimately in vain. She tried various means, from gentle coaxing to direct requests for more openness, but these strategies did not pierce the protective walls that Daryl had built around his heart. For viewers who only witnessed the Captain and Tennille brand, it may be astonishing to learn that Daryl Dragon, composer of love-oriented pop tunes and frontman for a duo celebrated for romantic hits, could not utter the phrase, "I love you," to his wife. And yet Toni's account underscores that real life is rarely as seamless as the image shaped by TV appearances and record promotions. With each passing year, she understood more clearly that Daryl's emotional constraints were rooted in a lifetime of internalized expectations and self-protection, making them nearly impossible to unlearn. Well, I do talk about that in the book. There were a lot of things that we didn't get to do because he refused to take his hat off. One was when we were in Rome and had a chance to go into the Sistine Chapel, and he wouldn't take his hat off. And I should have said, "Well, heck with you," and gone in there by myself, but I didn't. I said, "Okay," and went back to the hotel and the health food restaurant with him. While it may sound trivial to focus on a hat, Toni's anecdote about the Sistine Chapel illustrates the daily realities of their imbalanced dynamic. Daryl's unwavering attachment to his captain's hat was part of his stage persona, but he extended that attachment into everyday life. The Sistine Chapel enforces a rule disallowing head coverings out of respect, so his refusal to remove it prevented them from entering. In essence, Toni missed out on a once-in-a-lifetime cultural and spiritual experience because Daryl refused to compromise, and she acquiesced. For Toni, this moment was symbolic of how many activities, big or small, were derailed by Daryl's rigid comfort zones. The text references a health food restaurant, implying that Daryl's particularities extended to dietary habits, location choices, and more. The deeper frustration lies in Toni's reflection that she should have just gone alone. This acknowledgement conveys regret. She felt she consistently put his needs or preferences above her own, sacrificing experiences she would have otherwise cherished. Moreover, this daily struggle highlights how large and small decisions alike became entangled in Daryl's idiosyncrasies. Over time, The cumulative effect of such compromises would erode Toni's sense of agency. She may have entered the relationship believing that understanding and patience could coax him into greater openness, but repeated incidents like the Sistine Chapel fiasco underscored his intractability. What started as minor concessions for the sake of harmony became a pattern of Toni sidelining her own desires to accommodate him, inevitably fueling resentment. One might think that a world-famous musician, someone who has performed for millions, would be flexible about removing a hat in a sacred place or experimenting with different dining experiences. But Daryl's steadfastness in these small matters is revealing. It was another layer of emotional insulation, a controlled environment that let him avoid discomfort or perceived vulnerabilities. Toni's frustration is palpable as she recalls these anecdotes. Each missed opportunity, each step back from asserting her own wishes, contributed to the overall dissatisfaction in their marriage. Their musical connection, however, remained undeniable. In a particularly revealing moment during their own show, Daryl shared his philosophical side, demonstrating the depth of thought that existed beneath his quiet exterior. The closest friend I ever had, I feel, was a man, 96, that I totally communicated with. And just spiritually, we kind of hit it off. And he taught me a lot about a thing called speak good, think good, do good. And if you practice that, you can get a lot accomplished. And you don't even know why it's happening. It just seems to be working in your favor. For Toni, the years of trying to break through Daryl's emotional walls took their toll. Her reflection on their relationship reveals both the hope she carried throughout their marriage and the eventual acceptance of its limitations. Well, it took me 2 years to write the memoir, so it's kind of hard to distill it into a short thing. But Daryl and I always connected musically. That was the best part of everything that we did. But he was never able to be what I romantically thought he would be. I was raised in a very loving family, and love was a very big part of who I am. And his family was quite different. And he was a very closed-in man. It was very hard to reach, but I was convinced I could. The disconnect between their public persona and private reality was perhaps most poignantly illustrated in their music. The songs that millions of fans saw as expressions of their love story carried a deeper, more complicated truth. Like I say, it was love on my part. And I wrote, songs like The Way I Want to Touch You, about how I felt for Daryl. I wrote Do That to Me One More Time about how I felt for Daryl. But the funny thing was, later on, he told me he never paid any attention to lyrics, so he didn't know what I was saying. He was strictly a music man, and brilliant at it, I must say. In many ways, it is the lyrics that brought Toni Tennille widespread fame. Her voice, along with the memorable melodies, captured the hearts of listeners who assumed the words mirrored the real love she and Daryl shared. Toni clarifies that she indeed poured her personal feelings into songs like The Way I Want to Touch You and Do That to Me One More Time, each brimming with sensuality, yearning, and the promise of deep connection. Fans heard these numbers and assumed Toni and Daryl enjoyed a romantic dynamic as intense as the music suggested. Yet Toni's admission that Daryl paid no attention to lyrics reveals the stark truth. Even the recorded expressions of her desire and devotion were lost on him. His attention gravitated toward the musical arrangement, the chord progressions, the harmonics, everything but the words that Toni chose to convey her love. It's a bittersweet irony that their biggest hits, frequently lauded as iconic love anthems of the 1970s, emerged from a union that lacked the emotional reciprocity usually associated with love songs. This situation shines a light on a broader phenomenon in the music industry. Listeners often conflate a performer's stage persona or lyrical content with their actual life. For Captain and Tennille, this assumption was amplified. The duo performed together, wore coordinated outfits, and presented themselves as a couple deeply in love. By the time Do That to Me One More Time hit the charts, fans felt they were witnessing a continuation of the couple's romantic story. Little did they know that Toni's heartfelt words were more akin to a one-sided confession, lacking the recognition she craved from the very person who inspired them. Moreover, Toni's statement that Daryl was strictly a music man underscores his brilliance in composing, arranging, and performing. He was not apathetic toward the overall art. He was singularly focused on the musical dimension. That focus, while beneficial to creating hit songs, came at the cost of ignoring Toni's lyrical pleas for intimacy and tenderness. The public devoured these songs as reflections of a perfect love without realizing the creative tension behind them. Songs with lyrics yearning for closeness, arranged by a husband who effectively tuned out the meaning of the words. In the years following their divorce, Toni maintained contact with Daryl, showing the complex nature of their relationship even after its end. Their continued connection spoke to the deep bond they shared, even if it wasn't the romantic one Toni had hoped for. He knew. He just didn't think I would do it. And I'm not sure really how devastated he was because, he's fine now. I talk to him about every week or 10 days, and he has people that are doing the things for him that I used to do, and he seems happy. I know that seems odd. Well, he's not ever happy, but he seems fine. This bittersweet postscript to their marriage reveals much about both their relationship and Daryl's nature. Even after their separation, Toni continued to care about his welfare, maintaining the role of caretaker she had assumed throughout their marriage, albeit from a distance. The distinction she makes about him not being happy but being fine speaks volumes about her deep understanding of his character and her acceptance of who he fundamentally is. Their divorce was finalized in 2014 after a union that lasted nearly 4 decades. By that time, Toni could no longer overlook the emotional distance. Yet, as these quotes indicate, the end of their marriage did not sever their connection. Toni still called regularly to check on him, and Daryl seemingly carried on with his life in a manner consistent with his usual demeanor, unperturbed, neither deeply sorrowful nor outwardly relieved. When Toni says, "He knew, he just didn't think I would do it," she underscores how Daryl might have taken her loyalty for granted. Over the years, he grew accustomed to her presence and the role she played, organizing daily life, supporting him on stage, and handling countless logistical or personal details. It seems he was caught off guard that she would finally opt to dissolve the marriage. However, Toni is uncertain whether he felt genuine devastation. Her observation that he's not ever happy but he seems fine resonates with the entire portrayal of Daryl Dragon. Actions, staying in contact and remaining concerned about his well-being, reveal her continued empathy. She had spent so many years trying to reach him emotionally that she could not simply detach when the marriage ended. This ongoing connection, albeit at arm's length, might puzzle those who see divorce as a clean break. But for Toni, it fits the pattern of care and understanding she cultivated throughout their relationship. Despite being deeply hurt by his emotional absence, she never stopped caring about the man whose musical gifts and quiet nature had first drawn her in. Today, looking back on their 39-year marriage, Toni finds a measure of peace. No, I don't. And the happiness was the joy of the music, and like I say, that was the one thing that Daryl and I had together that was wonderful. In other words, I knew that he thought I was a great singer, and he thought I was a wonderful songwriter, and that was how I could win his approval. Even though I could never get the romantic love that I wanted from him, because he simply couldn't do it. But I knew how much he respected my talent, my abilities, and that was enough to go on for a while. The Captain and Tennille's story stands as a testament to the complex nature of human relationships, how two people can create beautiful harmony in one aspect of life while struggling to connect in another. Their legacy lives on, not just in their music, but in the honest telling of their story, reminding us that behind every public facade lies a more nuanced truth. While their marriage may not have been the fairy tale their fans imagined, their musical partnership produced moments of genuine magic that continue to resonate with audiences today. And there you have it, the bittersweet story of Toni Tennille and Daryl Dragon, two talented individuals whose musical synergy captivated millions even as their personal lives struggled to find true harmony. Their journey reminds us that what the public sees on stage can mask a much more complicated reality behind closed doors. Thank you for watching, and if you found this look into their relationship insightful, remember to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the lives and legacies of legendary artists.